Just how good was Isaac Wilson on Saturday in Utah's big win at Oklahoma State? And if Wilson has to continue, what can this Utah team do? As well as we'll discuss what this massive win means for this Utah team ceiling in 2024. All that and more coming up on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen every single day. We are available on all platforms, including YouTube and wherever you may get your podcast. If this is your first time listening to our show, make sure you like and subscribe, as we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network. If you're in the market for a second listen today, make sure you check out Locked On College Football. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. You can download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege. That's all caps, no spaces, for $20 off your first purchase today. My name is JT Wistrcill, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department. Excited to be joined on today's show by Nate Carter, a KSL Sports Rewind analyst. And Nate, this was an awesome performance from Utah on Saturday, and it wouldn't have been possible without Isaac Wilson. So we are going to talk about his performance even more in depth, talk about what it means if this team has to continue with him, because obviously there's a lot up in the air about Cam Rising. We are also going to talk about what the massive win means for Utah in that they were able to acquire in Stillwater, and a little bit more on the whole Cam Rising situation at the end. But starting with Wilson, look, it was not a perfect game, of course, but it's hard not for me to come away incredibly impressed by a number of things he did when you take in the circumstances. He found out minutes before the game that he was going to be the starter. To go into a hostile environment, an incredible high temperatures, too. The heat was on, and I think Utah did a pretty good job protecting him overall, but there were some times, right, where those coverage sacks happened, and he got laid out, had a couple of interceptions, a lot of those due to pressure, I would say, too, but so many big throws and big moments he delivered, and for him being as young as he is, thrown into this situation, I just come away incredibly impressed with what we saw from Wilson.
Yeah, I think Isaac Wilson did great today. I think we're seeing a huge benefit from having the headsets in the quarterback's helmets.
Ooh.
Andy Ludwig is able to help coach him through, read the defenses, let him go through his progressions pre-snap to what the defense is doing. So I think that's a huge opportunity for this team to take advantage of and move forward. We know Wilson has the physical capabilities, ran for 48 yards, was able to sling it down the field. The team rallied around him. Obviously, we had multiple Dorian Singer acrobatic catches, hauling in the ball, fighting for yards after the catch, doing everything they could so that Isaac was able to go into Stillwater and come out with the first Big 12 win of the season.
Isn't it crazy to think the quarterback we saw at Southern Utah or play against Southern Utah and the one who just went in to Oklahoma State and helped this team win, like that's the same guy. Like the in-season development and growth that Wilson has gotten just from getting these reps has been marvelous. And you mentioned the acrobatic catches by Singer. Money Parks had to have one too. Brant Keithy. Obviously, Wilson needs to work on his ball placement, but the fact that he is so young and still putting it in good enough position is one of the things that I'm encouraged. You mentioned the rushing yards. It only ended up being 48, but the big one down the side, there were several key moments where he scrambled. As we know, unfortunately in college football too, the sacks take away a lot of the negative yardage, which I don't love that. I just think they're two completely separate things. I wish there was a way statistically to divvy that up better, but just Wilson so frequently meeting the moment was so impressive to watch. And I just go back to Nate. It is hard and crazy to believe that he's the same guy that we saw go out against Southern Utah.
Yeah, we definitely see he wants to play ball. He wants to take shots. He wants to charge down for the fourth down conversions. He's ready to play, and he's learning on what he needs to work on. I think the coaching staff is doing a great job playing to his strengths. We have the wide receivers, the motions. He likes to run away from the pressure and be able to get the ball down the field. You still see him making a couple hesitations, and when they were bringing the house, he ended up on his back. He'll look at it. he gets to watch film to improve. I just hope that there's not a glaring weakness out there that the rest of the Big 12 is looking at to try to take advantage of.
Yeah, I don't feel like there is. And I think one thing that is also just crazy to look at now, Nate, is as I look at Utah's schedule, if you would have said Isaac Wilson's going to be Utah's starter, I even said it on my show last week where I was like, okay, I'm not going to act like Utah. I would have picked against Utah if I knew Wilson wasn't going to play. I don't know. Maybe I would have been biased and talked myself into it, but it was hard to be like, oh, yeah, he'll go in and beat a top 50 team at their house. But now that Wilson has done that, I look at it's hard for me to look at any game on Utah's schedule and be like, nope, they won't win that one because they just do not have that daunting of a schedule as well either. Utah does not have to go and play Georgia, of course. Like there are some solid Big 12 teams that are absolutely capable of beating Utah, but I just don't see why Utah wouldn't be the favorite in pretty much, and honestly, every game they have left on their schedule, unless Wilson kind of drops off because this team plays so well around him. And Wilson now, just like Bryson Barnes did at times last season, right? Wilson doesn't have to be the reason this team wins. He can be part of the reason, one of the many reasons that this team wins. The game doesn't fall on his back, and thus he's allowed to just play quarterback, make a few plays, and it's okay if he misses some because you can depend on the defense. You can depend on the running game. So after this game, I just feel like the outlook on this team, you can't come away feeling discouraged. You have to come away feeling like, wow, if you're someone who picked Utah to go to the college football playoff, that I feel like, well, of course, you need Cam to get back and healthy if you want Utah to go to the maybe make a deep college football playoff run. But just in terms of like them making the Big 12 championship game, that's where I just feel incredibly excited about and optimistic about what this squad can do.
Yeah, I'm very excited for this team. It did feel early on, both teams felt that neither of them wanted to play from behind. We saw Oklahoma State kind of throw the kitchen sink on their first drive, running wildcats, play action, screen motions, everything, throwing the sink in there, trying to get points on the board early so that they could play their pro style to just feed Ollie Gordon and just control the game. Instead, the whole script flipped on them. You had what was the incredible 42 minutes of possession by Utah to
Crazy.
Oklahoma State's 17. Isaac Wilson was able to get the points on the board early, able to kind of change that tempo that Utah could play the game they wanted to. You said the field was hot. That Oklahoma State defense looked exhausted at times.
Yes.
And that Micah Bernard 62-yard run, I think, was just a war of attrition. It was just – there was nothing left on that defense, and he just went flying down the sideline.
So many memorable moments from this game, and it's just one that you feel like will be remembered because Utah made a massive Big 12 statement. And speaking of the Big 12, I want to talk about Utah's Big 12 outlook a little bit more after what they were able to do on Saturday. We're going to talk more about Utah in one moment. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. And we just got done with a great slate of NFL games on Sunday. You still got the Monday night game to look forward to. Thursday night football will be here before you know it. And that's not all. MLB playoffs underway. How about, of course, too, another great Saturday of college football coming up. We got Alabama versus Georgia this Saturday, as well as Utah versus Arizona. Fantastic games that you can get in on heading over to FanDuel today. Make sure you check out FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook right now. All right, Nate, talking about this Utah's outlook in the Big 12. It's just, once again, the fact that Utah, in what everyone said was their toughest game on the season, and I would have agreed, even though I felt like it was a good matchup, and I always believed Utah would find a way to win. Now, I didn't know Isaac Wilson would be there, as I mentioned, but felt like they'd find a way to win. It's just hard for me not to be confident in this team's ability to go on a run, and you're not going to go undefeated, but this is where it's just hard for me to look and be like, oh yeah, this is the loss after what was the most difficult game on your schedule, you just emerged victorious in. I don't think Utah's going to go undefeated. I'm not saying that, but I mean, it's definitely on the table now, right?
Yeah, definitely on the table. When we saw TCU a couple years ago, Hypno-Toad era, I believe the ball was just bouncing their way. So undefeated season is going to take a little bit of luck for at least for this squad. But looking at the matchups, they're going to be a FanDuel favorite each week going into it, unless something tragic happens. But yeah, able to win today with the true freshman quarterback. We hope Cam Rising's able to grip a football sooner than later, but that looking really good for the Utes in a situation to go to the playoffs.
Utah does look really good right now. It feels like they have a great opportunity to do big things in the postseason, a great chance to reach the Big 12 title game. And Nathan, I think something else we got to talk about is just, mentioned this a little bit on my show yesterday, but all off season, we heard so much about how is this team from the Pac-12 going to come into the Big 12 and become one of the best teams instantly. Like, there were so many fans that believe that they were frustrated by Utah being the top ranked team in the conference, right? There was so many people that felt like, oh, this narrative is false and that Utah doesn't deserve this and all these things. And it was basically just because, like, how can Pac-12 come in and shine in the Big 12? And that's exactly what we've seen happen here. This is Utah announcing and proving, because what is Oklahoma State? If you look at the last few years, the most consistent program in the Big 12 has been Oklahoma State, I feel like. So Utah went into Oklahoma State's house when they were a top 15 team. Everyone was raving about Alan Bowman, and they absolutely demoralized. So I feel like even the Big 12 Utah doubters have to come away with this one feeling like, okay, who knows what will happen with Utah? We just talked about how high we are on them. But as we stand right here today, Utah absolutely, I feel like, validated why they were one of the teams to not just conference, but potentially do things in the postseason based on what they put on the field.
Yeah, I felt like kind of some of the slander Utah would take is from not knowing who the guys were going to be this season ahead of time. We knew about the Ollie Gordons, Noah Fafitas. We knew about the guys who were going to put up stats this year. We weren't able to project Mike Bernard, Dijon Stanley, and just Isaac Wilson. We didn't know what we were going to get out of this. And then the names stepping up on defense. We knew they were there and we trusted the system. And that's what Utah football is it's a system that's ready to reload, give guys opportunities, and let them perform. So I've been definitely, I wouldn't say surprised, but I'm definitely happy with the outcome that we've seen so far with this team. Is there a chance for them to lay an egg somewhere down this schedule? Possibly, but looking right now, things are looking good for them to win out.
I mean, so if we look at the schedule, I mean, I guess to me, like, we have Arizona later this week. I don't think this Arizona team is beating Utah. I've not been impressed with what I've seen from Arizona. I watched Kansas State completely crush the Wildcats a few weeks ago. They scored 7 points in the game. I don't feel good about Arizona. I feel Utah's clearly better than Arizona State. The game against TCU, maybe, but it's just hard. Once again, like, when Utah plays at home, we've just seen what Utah does to teams. Game at Houston, Utah's just clearly a better team than Houston. And we know this to be true. So I feel like good about that. Rivalry games can always be interesting. Utah also feel good about Utah against BYU. Utah at Colorado. Shedeur Sanders is talented. Utah team is clearly better in every other phase except for quarterback. And yes, Travis Hunter obviously is fantastic. Iowa State, a really good team. Maybe that's the one I look at. I would probably still give the edge to that UCF team at the end, but this is one of the best defenses in college football. And we know how many talented playmakers this offense supports as well too, Nathan. So I just go back again, like, to anyone who doubts on this Utah team, find me the game where you're like, oh yeah, there's a loss, because the one that everyone said was going to be a loss is the one that Utah just found a way to win.
Yeah, Utah was winning until they switched the switch to trying not to lose. They were ready to run away with that one. Again, BYU game is scary. I will probably take the FanDuel points for the underdog in that matchup, because just how the
rivalry
games go. Colorado, is having a fit with everybody, but they're going to put up points to try to.
They will.
Kind of those Caleb Williams USC shootouts. So hopefully we have a quarterback that's ready to gun point for point with them. And then TCU's scary because that's just an old rival that kind of has some nightmares for some people throughout the years. Iowa State's older defense.
Here's what's interesting in what you're saying, though, right? Like, all we're saying is, like, we have to convince ourselves. We don't just look at them and we go, oh yeah, like they're gonna beat Utah. Like, Utah's just clearly better than everyone they're gonna play, and that's a luxury that not many teams are gonna play. Because even the Georgias of the world, right? Georgia has to play Texas. Same thing. Texas has to play Georgia. Alabama has to play Georgia. Like, all of the top teams have to face off against each other. Utah's a legitimate top 10 team to me, and there might play some other top 20 teams, right? But that's where we have to convince ourselves of, like, the history and things outside of what the product these teams are putting on the field. I've seen Iowa State they've played some really shaky halves. And I know I'm not saying Utah's been perfect, but once again, this is just where I go back to Utah's schedule, and based on how Utah's performed, versus how their opponents are performing, Nate, I just really like the way the schedule lines up for them.
Yeah, no, we're happy about the schedule. We're just hoping that the team just doesn't trip over themselves to get there. It's really,
you're right.
We can see one of these games is going to be Pac-12 after dark, where we're like, this was not how this one was supposed to go. This is supposed to be a business trip, and this is hanging on to the edge of our seats. So, hey, that's why we're here. That's why it's fun, but I'm excited to see how it plays out.
I'm excited to see how it plays out as well. It's going to be fascinating, and this Utah team has everything they want in front of them. We cannot wait to see what the future holds for this Utah squad. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is also brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Game Time is a new feature called Game Picks that makes getting tickets to your favorite live events even easier. Game Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Look, I love Game Time because it gives me everything I need when I'm trying to conveniently buy a ticket that also shows me what kind of a deal I'm getting. What do I mean by what kind of a deal I'm getting? So often you go and use a ticket app and you buy a ticket, but you don't get to see what your view from the seat will actually be like. Not with Game Time. They offer you a panoramic view from the seat, as well as things like their low price guarantee, where Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. How about Game Time's ticket coverage? Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So if you want to go to this week's top Big 12 showdown, you got to use Game Time. You can truly take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege. That's capital LONC for Locked On and College, all one word, Locked On College, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, we're going to talk about Cam Rising really quick. You mentioned Brock Heward. Brock Heward and Jason Benetti are absolutely incredible. I just want to say that every time they're on a game, I literally fist bump. Like, I'm just like, not only am I, as someone who does play-by-play, going to learn something, but I'm just going to be entertained as well. So I think they're fantastic. What's your 10 seconds on that tandem?
My mom loves them, and she does not dole out that praise. Very, very judicious. She's very judicious with that kind of praise. But no, I agree. They're a great team, great chemistry. I wish someday that you and I could be half as good as they are. That would be a huge accomplishment.
Really quick before we get out of here this episode, we're going to give our brief thoughts on the whole Cam situation. Look, this is what Utah, this is where it's tough, because it does sound like, if everything, Isaac said minutes before, found out he was starting.
Yeah, 20 minutes before, right?
20 minutes before, several of Utah's most trusted beat reporters tweeted out that, like, they had sources that said Cam was going to play and then didn't play. So this is just the hard part about rooting for this team, I guess, is that we are never, I thought for sure Cam was going to play. I'll say someone as well too. When you looked at everything that added up, even Brett McMurphy, who that's a massive name, right? Said Cam Rising is expected to play. And I don't think he was wrong. I do think obviously Cam suffered a setback or wasn't able to meet benchmarks they set. Either way, it's incredibly frustrating. Going forward on this show, we're going to probably talk about every game with Isaac Wilson starting until I actually see Cam Rising on the field, because Unfortunately, it's just terrible luck that this injury has struck Cam, the finger one, just being able to not grip it. And yeah, I mean, I don't think there's another word to describe it just better than frustrating that once again, we're in this situation where we spend so much time talking about Cam Rising and he doesn't play. And I just once again think the frustrations from that come with how much emphasis, energy, and time is put into these games and even the gambling implications of it now. But what I'm talking about is just the fact that once again, there is so much that ride on these games, and Cam Rising, we don't know about his availability.
Kyle Whittingham's job is to win football games, and he's going to do whatever he needs to do to win football games. I don't put this responsibility on Kyle to be the one who needs to be out there giving people injury reports and sending them practice notes and updates and things of that nature. That said, the people who fund this program are the people who buy tickets, watch the program on TV, buy fan gear and T-shirts and hats and all that kind of stuff. It is exhausting to be a fan of this program. And it's fun when they win, but you're almost just relieved rather than celebrating. Now, today, a little different, right? Because there's a lot of storylines that popped up, and maybe it would have been fun to talk about some of those throughout the week. Like, wow, Isaac Wilson on the road after a really good performance in the second half of Utah State. How does Andy Lugwood game plan that? And what does Morgan Scally do defensively? And so there's a lot of good storylines to talk about during the week. Now, again, I'm not going to put that on Kyle, but at some point in time, there are powers that be that need to step in, whether it's the conference of the Big 12 that needs to start requiring an injury report the way the SEC has, the way the ACC has, the way the NFL does, right? Somebody has to be the authority in the room because Kyle's job is to win football games. And there has to be somebody that tells Kyle Whittingham, hey, you can't do this anymore. Because Kyle's made the point, until he sees a reason to report the injuries, he's not going to do it. And I don't know. I mean, the line movement this week was crazy.
Insane.
And I had discussion with people that track gambling, that are deep into gambling and understand gambling way better than I do. And there's a lot of speculation. I think it was Lee Sterling was on with OC on Friday talking about how he thought Cam Rising was worth way more than just a couple points. So did I. So there is so much more outside of football, and a lot of it is what really fuels football. Somebody's got to get control of this. I'm not calling anybody out specifically or by name. I'm just saying that this is going to be exhausting for a fan base that already feels stretched thin. Prices have gone up. They're asked to contribute more because of collectives now, right? TV prices are going up, and to watch your game, it's what an adventure it is to figure out what service you need. And I know Dabo finally figured out the joy that is YouTube TV and the multi-view, but good luck if your game's on Peacock, because that's not going to be a part of it, or if you're on ESPN Plus, because there's no multi-view for that. And so fans are just feeling exhausted. And I don't, on one hand, I do want to tell people, like, yeah, we got to grow up. Like, we got to be, responsible for our own emotions. But at the same time, like, man, like, at what point do the fans get to feel good about this thing that they're investing time, energy, and money into?
I agree.
And then to your point, there are media members who are putting their reputations out on the line, and it's for them, it's not just a game. This is their livelihoods. This is their jobs, their careers. And so it's getting to be a point to where this is a much bigger deal than just, hey, we don't talk about injuries. It is a problem. And so I hope that people get together, especially those who are in authority. I can't do anything about this. Like all I do is I don't even talk behind a microphone really, unless it's a Friday night and it's at a football game. And even then, we're just having fun. There's not a whole lot I can do about it. But I hope that somebody out there listens to this and understands that there's a lot of people out there that have a connection to this program, that need Utah football, that need the community that it provides, right? That need those relationships. For me and my dad, there was a time where the only way we connected was through football. And I say that, like, even now, it's a huge chunk of what we talk about. And so people need things like that. And you've created a beautiful product. Let's find a solution to continue to make that enjoyable for the people involved, so that when it does come time to pay that 15-20% increase on your season tickets, it's a, man, I'm just excited to do this because I know I'm going to have a great time next year, even though you win, even if you lose, right? Like, wins and losses are the things that are beyond our control. But the things that do happen on a weekly basis, there's got to be a way to be better about that.
All right, 1,000. I agree with everything you said. It was just completely perfectly said. And the only thing I think I even want to like extra reiterate is those journalists, like we said, who put their reputation on the line to try to provide this team with the best coverage and are given no support when they're trying to enhance the fans' experience who love and root for this team so much. I think that's where I just think it's really an unfortunate situation. And it's one, and go, Brown.
I was going to say, part of what makes your show great is you have a variety of different people who come on and provide a variety of different viewpoints and points. Like when I'm listening through the week, I don't just want to hear you talk about Utah football all the time. I'm listening to you. I'm listening to OC. I'm listening to interviews and all these other people that have perspectives. And I'm talking with people at College Football Network about it too. And it's unique to hear their perspective as folks who know Utah, but maybe don't know Utah, right? And all that stuff helps educate me as either a fan or an analyst or whatever it is my role. And so I think it's important to have more voices. We've gotten in this weird mode of wanting everything to be, and I need to be careful with my words, but like siloed media, right? Where it's just my team and the people who confirmation bias media. And I'll give credit to Sean Walker at KSL.com because he's come up with that term, and I love it. We want people to talk about our teams and just say the thing that we're thinking about it. So it makes us feel good and feel smart. And I think some of it is this transition of getting out of that mode and into let's be thoughtful and considerate about what other people are saying. And also to that degree, if we're going to have these conversations, let's give people some information so that they can have good conversations. And then maybe it won't be so, I don't want to say petty, but just cutthroat in some regards, because there are a lot of people out there that have positive things to say that really can't say it anymore because they don't want to deal with the threats of having to lose a job or a career or something that they truly love too. And we don't want to take football away from people. I think there's a happy medium somewhere in there. And I just, for something that does so much good and is so powerful and at this point makes so much money, there have to be, and there are so many smart people involved in this sport. And I know it's easy for us to criticize those in charge. There's a lot of people that know a lot more about the job than this Joe football guy talking behind a mic today, but at the same time, fans deserve some recognition and they deserve some support.
But Nate, really appreciate you stopping by to join me for this one, my friend. Let everyone know where they can follow you at.
Yeah, find me on X, Crazy N8. I'll probably just be ranting about arguing some sports takes and deleting them afterwards. So let me know if you catch them.
Hey, that's what makes social media great, right? Is we can have that back and forth discussion, just like I was lucky to get to do with you tonight, my friend. Thank you for stopping by with me.
Hey, thanks, JT.
That's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On Utes. We got Utah Football Media Day coming up. We get to hear all of Kyle Whittingham's thoughts, also get to learn more about what the future holds for Cam Rising. I'm probably going to be a lot of ambiguous quotes, but either way, we'll be breaking it down on Locked On Utes.